interesting insights as well into what's happening in the case of tracker mortgages, which some people might have thought, because they have tended to go down and they're now very low, that they would have been spared the worst excesses, but apparently not so.
No, what the central bank actually finds is that since 2010 there has been an increase in the distress levels of people who have tracker mortgages. That's not so much down to the mortgages themselves, because they have actually fallen in terms of the repayments that are due. However, it's more down to the general picture in terms of people losing work or people going out of work completely. But I think the picture for the banks, I mentioned there's 26 billion of mortgages, they're in arrears. The banks have 9 billion euro of excess capital which they can use for writing off mortgages. The question is that enough? And if it isn't, how much more would be needed?
And what's holding them back in applying it and seeing if it is enough?
Well, I think that their worry is that if they go out there and they do big write-downs, that it might cause more people to strategically default or decide not to pay their mortgages in the hopes of getting a good deal. But clearly there's a big issue there, because if you imagine for a moment that they had, let's theoretically say they had to write off half of the mortgage debt which was in arrears, that would cost 13 billion euro, but they have 9 billion euro. Where would the other money come from? Could it come from the state? No, the answer is we're completely overborrowed. However, potentially it could have to come from Europe, or either that, or it comes from banks having to apply a haircut somewhere in the system, which I think is unlikely because of the Cypriot catastrophe.
David, thank you very much indeed for that analysis. David Murphy, our business editor. More after the break.
Come on, let's sprint again and make the early meeting. Yeah, let's grab the bus and take the day full on. I will remember to pick up the dry cleaning and make the gym.
Keep going strong with Pharmaton, clinically proven to relieve fatigue and help sustain energy levels. Ask your pharmacist for Pharmaton capsules and always read the label.
Hello? Hi there. Shall we leave our coats in the hall? Yes, come through. We've just sat down at the table.
We brought some red wine.
You're naked! You said to come in the nude. I said come with some food. It's not that kind of dinner party.
Trouble hearing? Should have gone to Specsavers. Save up to 50% on leading brand hearing aids. Visit specsavers.ie to find your nearest hearing centre.
Your guide to automotive German from Opel. Effizienz. German for Opel's engineering efficiency. A principle which also applies to our finance offers, like the Opel Astra from €245 per month with 5-year warranty as standard. APR 4.9%. See your local Opel dealer today as offer ends May 31st. Lending criteria and terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Finance is generally provided by way of a hire purchase agreement. The credit provider is Bank of Ireland Finance, which is a registered trading name of Bank of Ireland. Opel. Wir leben Autos.
The Super Quinn Fish and Wine Sale is now on, with great offers at the fish counter this week, like freshly landed Irish monkfish fillets, 33% off. Super Quinn salmon fillets and cutlets for only €2 each. And tasty sea bass and plaice fillets, also just €2 each. And save up to half price on Sauvignon wines like Wolf Blast for just €7.50. The Super Quinn Fish and Wine Sale now on. Enjoy alcohol responsibly.
RTE Radio 1.
Eddie Izzard, Force Majeure World Tour 2013 at the O2 Dublin on May 26th.
If there was a god, then you think he would have flicked Hitler's head off.
Double Emmy Award winner Eddie Izzard is hailed as one of the foremost stand-ups of his generation.
Cake mix when I was a kid was a brilliant thing, and then they'd take that, they'd put it in an oven, and it would come out less good.
Tickets on sale now. Don't miss Eddie Izzard's Force Majeure live at the O2 Dublin.
Entertainment updates with RTE Radio 1.
You're with the news at 1. It's day 2 of the inquest into the deaths of 5 of the 6 crew on board the fishing trawler T-Bonhomme in West Cork last year. For more, we're joined by our southern editor Pascal Sheehy. Pascal, apparent conflict now between the official report conducted into the tragedy and what was said today.
Yes, Sean, this new evidence, or might be more precise to describe it as a new theory at this stage, came just before we broke from lunch from a marine surveyor attached to the Department of Transport, Owen O'Toole, and he said he examined the course which the T-Bonhomme took on its return from fishing grounds 15 nautical miles south of Glandore Harbour until the collision at Adam Island on the entrance to Glandore Harbour. Now, the said that 5 or 6 minutes prior to the collision, the T-Bonhomme made a significant and substantial change of course, which had the effect of turning directly towards Adam Island and putting it on a course for collision. He said he did not believe that this was the result of somebody switching off the autopilot and the effects of the weather taking over. Instead, he said he believed that it required human input. And when Barrister Elizabeth O'Connell for the Hayes family pointed out that this was a completely new theory, the coroner said, well, his investigation or his inquiry was entirely separate from the Marine Casualty Investigation Board report. No conclusions have been arrived at this stage, and what he was trying to do was to tease out what happened on the morning.
Interesting conflict, no doubt there'll be a lot of teasing out of that done in the coming hours. Pascal, thanks for that update on that inquest. Now we're going back to the Dáil, where the salaries of the top earners at RTE came in for scrutiny this morning when representatives of the station appeared before the Oireachtas Communications Committee. The Director General Noel Curran assured members that salaries had been reduced and contracts continued to be negotiated, as Alba Keneally now reports.
RTE's Director General began by outlining the current budgetary position at the station and the pay levels to contracted and staff broadcasters.
RTE, and it is important to say that, like the general public, values enormously the work of all of our on-air talent and those working behind the scenes. However, during the boom, the remuneration of RTE's top presenters became overinflated, and we paid our presenters too much.
Gael's Patrick O'Donovan, as well as the independent TD Luke Flanagan, put it to the Director General that the base salaries of the top earners were too high in the first place.
If you reduce something by 20 or 30%, and it sounds a huge percentage, the baseline was way, way too high.
Like if they were on 100,000, 30% would be a big cut. But 30% on 4, 5, 6 and 700,000 is, in percentage terms, a big cut, alright, but it still leaves them on absolutely ridiculous salaries.
The independent TD, Tom Fleming, compared the salaries to the earnings of the President of the United States.
We have reduced figures here now, but I'm still looking here. We'll make a comparison with the President of what's supposed to be this most probably in worldwide terms the one who's wielding the most power is the President of the United States at any one time. And I still see here where we have one is a TV and radio presenter is still making 3 times approximately the salary of Mr. Obama.
This is a question that surfaces all the time. There are lots of people in the Irish who supply to the Irish public sector or semi-state sector who earn more than that. In the UK, the British Prime Minister, 9,000 people in the public sector earn more than the British Prime Minister. 320 of them work on local councils. Hundreds of them work in the NHS. These comparisons are difficult. They're not necessarily apples with apples, but I do understand that people look and have looked at the fees we were paying and have had a concern. And I say again that we have tried to address that. I believe we've addressed it in a more wide-ranging way than other areas where people have concern, and the process is not complete yet.
The issue of the regional studios was also raised, including the closure of the London Bureau, about which the Director of News, Kevin Backhurst, had this to say.
We have just gone out and spoken to the BBC and other broadcasters there about the potential of premises and sharing premises and so on, and I have to say, even with my background, the response from the BBC hasn't been very positive, whereas other broadcasters have been more positive, so we're still exploring that options, and we may at some point, if we have the resources, looking at the London operation is quite high up the list of areas we might revisit, but we would do it in a very different way if we did it.
And that was Kevin Backhurst, Director of News and Current Affairs from RTE, speaking at that Oireachtas committee. And finally, an elderly couple from Norway are having their yacht towed to Castletown Bear today by the LE-IFA after it was damaged in bad weather as they sailed from the Azores to the Hebrides. A distress flare from the Alice II was seen first by a French trawler crew. Lieutenant Commander Erica Dowling has been telling me about the rescue.
We were operating approximately 100 miles or 120